One of the most powerful and heartbreaking symbols in modern Indigenous activism is the red hand painted over the mouth. You may have seen Native American women in photographs, artwork, demonstrations, or social media, wearing a bright red handprint across their lips and face. This symbol represents the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women, often shortened to MMIW. The hand over the mouth carries multiple meanings. It symbolizes the voices of Indigenous women who have been silenced through violence, the lack of attention their cases have historically received, and the generations of families who have been left without answers. It is not simply a symbol of mourning, it is a demand to be seen, heard, and protected. The MMIW movement draws attention to the disproportionately high rates of violence experienced by Indigenous women and girls in the United States and Canada. Indigenous women experience higher rates of homicide, sexual assault, and disappearance compared with many other demographic groups. Families and advocates have argued for decades that these cases were frequently ignored, misclassified, underinvestigated, or not properly entered into missing persons databases. The movement seeks justice for victims, support for families, improved data collection, and changes to the legal systems that have allowed so many cases to go unresolved. The MMIW crisis did not appear suddenly. Many Indigenous activists connect today's violence to a long history of colonization, forced removal from ancestral lands, cultural suppression, broken treaties, and policies that weakened Indigenous communities. Generations of trauma, economic inequality, lack of access to services, and social instability have contributed to increased vulnerability. Another major factor is the complicated legal system surrounding crimes involving Native Americans. Depending on where a crime occurs and whether the victim or perpetrator is Native or non-Native, responsibility may involve tribal, state, federal, or local authorities. These overlapping jurisdictions have historically created confusion and delays in investigations. Many families of missing Indigenous women describe a painful pattern. They felt that their loved ones were not treated with the same urgency as other missing persons. Historically, some cases received little media coverage and fewer investigative resources. Researchers and advocates have also identified problems with incomplete databases and inconsistent reporting. The lack of accurate data has made it difficult to understand the full scale of the crisis. In recent years, governments, law enforcement agencies, and Indigenous organizations have begun creating task forces, improving databases, and increasing awareness. But advocates say much work remains. The red handprint specifically symbolizes the silencing of Indigenous women. The hand covering the mouth represents voices that were taken away. Women who were murdered before they could tell their stories, women who disappeared without explanation, and families who felt unheard when they searched for answers. The color red also holds important significance in many Indigenous cultures, and has become associated with the movement because it is considered a color that spirits can see, and because it demands attention and visibility. Although meanings can vary among different Indigenous nations and individuals, the red hand has become one of the most recognized symbols of the movement. Statistics on MMIW are difficult to determine precisely because of inconsistent reporting, differing definitions, and historical gaps in record keeping. However, studies and government reports have consistently shown that Indigenous women experience disproportionately high rates of violence. Behind every statistic is a person, a daughter, mother, sister, aunt, or friend. The MMIW movement emphasizes remembering their names, telling their stories, and refusing to allow them to disappear twice, first in life and then in memory. Much of the awareness surrounding MMIW has come not from governments but from Indigenous women, families, grassroots organizations, artists, and community leaders. They organize marches, create artwork, hold ceremonies, and share the stories of those who are missing. For many, the movement is not only about justice after violence occurs, but about preventing future violence and restoring the safety and dignity of Indigenous women and girls. As genealogists and historians, we understand the importance of names and stories. A person's identity is more than a statistic. It is a family line, a community, and a history. Many Indigenous families searching for missing loved ones are fighting to preserve those connections. The work of documenting lives, preserving family histories, and telling forgotten stories is one small way of resisting erasure. The Red Hand reminds us that this crisis continues today. Indigenous communities continue to advocate for better investigations, improved cooperation among agencies, more resources for families, and stronger protections for Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people. Awareness alone does not solve the problem, but awareness is often the first step toward change. Thank you for joining me for this important conversation about the red hand symbol and the missing and murdered Indigenous women movement. Understanding the history behind a symbol allows us to see the human stories that created it. The red hand is a reminder of lives interrupted, families still searching, and communities demanding that Indigenous women and girls are no longer ignored. By learning these stories and sharing them responsibly, we help ensure that these women are remembered not just as victims, but as people who belong to families, nations, and histories that continue today.